More than 50%.
Depends on where you live in Orange County.
Yeah,
I could be.
I mean,
Okay, we are live now.
yeah.
Live, Mayor, so when
We are
you
live.
ready.
Outstanding. Okay. Everyone, let's see. It is Wednesday, June 16th. It is 3:01, and I'd like to call to order the study session of the City Council. And may I have roll call, please?
Councilmember Miller,
Present.
Councilmember Ramos,
Present.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Furman,
Present.
and Mayor Holmes.
Present, and thank you very much. The Planning Commission will also be joining us. That's outstanding. I'd like to have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mayor Pro Tem, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Absolutely. Everybody, please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Thank you.
City Clerk, is there any public comment?
Yes, Mayor, we have Taylor. Let me get the full name. Bear with me.
Sure.
Taylor Varner,
Okay.
she's on the line. Taylor, you have 3 minutes.
I'm sorry. Hello, this is Taylor. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi Taylor.
Hi. Good afternoon, members of the City Council and Planning Commission. My name is Taylor Leibold Varner, and I'm joining you today as both the Regional Affordable Housing Planner for Lift to Rise and brand new resident of the City of Indio. Really excited. My husband and I were fortunate enough to buy our first home here earlier this year and are very proud to be residents of the city. And I just want to say thank you to you as leaders and staff for fostering a diverse, vibrant city with housing options affordable to a wide range of residents. I feel extraordinarily lucky to be a new homeowner, especially knowing what we know about the rampant housing instability facing thousands of families in our region. Even before the pandemic, over half of residents in the Coachella Valley paid more than 30% of their incomes on rent. And as you know, the pandemic has only worsened these conditions. Since June of last year, when the program started, the United Lift Rental Assistance Program has approved over $2.5 million in rental assistance to almost 600 households in the city of Indio alone. I'll say that again because I think it is striking. $2.5 million in rental assistance applications to almost 600 Indio households in the last year. Our collaborative action network is a network of dozens of local partners dedicated to increasing the supply of affordable housing in the Valley in order to increase housing stability for families. And we recognize that only by working cohesively as a region, recognizing the interconnectedness of housing issues for our local jurisdictions, can we make long-term change. We encourage you to keep that and the following in mind as you consider the future of housing in the city of Indio. Local jurisdictions like Indio can help spur the production of affordable housing by helping to lower development costs, such as through the reduction, waiver, or deferral of fees, increasing opportunities for by right affordable housing development, streamlining and other expediting processes, updating zoning and development standards, such as allowable density to allow for more housing units on a site. And then finally, by coordinating with other jurisdictions on planning and housing issues in order to increase our impact and efficiencies. Once again, I just really want to thank you for your leadership and for your time and consideration of our comment. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time.
I have no further comments.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Then at this point, item number 4, study session items. The City Council and Planning Commission joint study session for discussion and possible direction on the housing element. Mr. Snyder, take it away.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Member Town, members of the City Council, and also members of the Planning Commission. My name is Kevin Snyder. I'm the Director of Community Development for your city. This afternoon, we are coming back to you after approximately 6 months from our first joint meeting where we talked to you about housing element issues at that time. There's been a lot of work going on since that last discussion with the council and the commission. The city's consultant team, led by Dudek, has been doing a lot of work. And we're at a point now where we want to share an update with you. We want to give you some kind of overview of the various findings that we've made, the key findings. And then we really want to transfer into a conversation focused on the concept of pro-housing. The housing element is a requirement of the state of California. And in many ways, it's kind of a version of a checklist. There are things we have to do and it has to be in a certain format. That can sometimes challenge the ability to be bold and innovative in the context of the housing element, but it doesn't challenge the city's ability to think boldly and to think in an innovative mindset. And that's really where the pro-housing discussion will orient the council and the commission this afternoon. The housing element can set a foundation for pro-housing, and pro-housing is a term that is used by the state. It's an actual official designation. It is now being offered to cities and other municipalities that are interested in establishing a pro-housing designation for their communities through the State Department of Housing and Community Development. And it has many benefits, including the opportunity to get extra points when we're applying for grants for transportation or housing or other types of grants. So the consultant team is going to lead you through a discussion. We are mindful that you have a very busy day ahead of you. We will end right before 4 o'clock to allow you the opportunity to transition to your closed session meeting. And we'll really kind of focus on the majority of the meeting on an opportunity to speak with the council and the commission. So thank you. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Dixon with Dudek, who's going to lead you through the presentation and help facilitate the conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kevin. I should be sharing my screen. I think everyone can hopefully see this. All right, so good afternoon, planning commissioners, city council members, and mayor. My name is Elizabeth Dixon, as Kevin stated, and I'm here today with my colleagues from Dudek, Erica Van Sickle and Asha Blyer. And we're also joined today by Nathan Mader from London Mader Associates to present the update to the housing element of the city's general plan. As you recall, we previously met with you to provide an overview of the work ahead on the housing element update. And today we will do a quick recap on the intent of the project, lay the foundation for housing work to come, review some of the proposed actions to be taken throughout the housing element, and Nathan will provide some key findings on the development market as it relates to housing in Indio. And in addition to Dudek and London Mader Associates, this project is being led by staff from the city's Community Development Department, including Kevin Snyder, Layla Namvar, and Jesus Gomez. I will now pass things over to my colleague, Erica Van Sickle. Erica.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Elizabeth mentioned, my name is Erica Van Sickle. I'm going to start with a brief summary of the intent of the housing element update and an overview of the work we've done since our last meeting, I believe in February or January, time flies. Next slide, please. So the housing element is one of the general plan 7 required elements by law, and it must be updated every 8 years. In short, the housing element is a comprehensive strategy to achieving the city's housing needs and serves as the city's blueprint for how the city will facilitate the planning, approval, and construction of housing during the 6th cycle housing element period. And an effective housing element provides the necessary conditions for preserving and producing an adequate supply of housing affordable to people at a variety of income levels. Oh, all right, so stay on this slide, please. And so a very important component of the housing element is stakeholder and community engagement, and it largely helps to inform the housing element update. So while the housing element must address specific state requirements, it's ultimately a local plan, and it should reflect the vision and priorities of the community. So since our last meeting, we've been busy with a variety of outreach, including group and individual stakeholder meetings, which some of you were a part of, online surveys, and community meetings. And we've also finished our review of the 5th cycle housing element and the background documents, including the needs assessment and constraints analysis. And we've also been doing a lot of work on the sites analysis, which is needed for the final sites inventory. And we have found that there are sufficient sites to accommodate the city's regional housing needs allocation, also known as its RENA, and the no net loss buffer. under the current general plan designations, but this does assume that the zoning regulations in the zoning code update will correspond to the general plan and that they will be adopted prior to the housing element. And finally, we are working on the goals, policies, and programs for the housing element. Next slide, thank you. And so I want to quickly review what goals, policies, objectives, and programs are and their role in the housing element. And so goals provide the long-term vision and serve as the foundation of the plan. They're a broad statement of what the city and its residents hope to achieve over time. So more specifically over the 8-year housing element period. And so policies are statements that guide decision-making to implement the goals. Objectives are specific and measurable action-oriented statements, and they help to actually mark the progress towards the goal. And programs are specific implementable actions that will carry out the policies. Next slide, please. And so as Kevin briefly mentioned, so pro-housing, now I want to give a transition into a quick overview on what pro-housing is. And this is because there's pro-housing work to come after the housing element, and the city will pursue a pro-housing designation down the road. So we need to set the framework in the housing element for how the city will pursue becoming pro-housing. But as a quick note, while some of the housing element programs are being developed within the context of pro-housing, not all the programs of the housing element will be pro-housing. Thank you. And so in order to achieve the pro-housing designation, jurisdictions must meet basic threshold requirements related to compliance with housing element law and other state housing laws. They must have a compliant housing element, as well as local pro-housing policies that facilitate the planning, approval, and construction of housing. Next slide, please. And again, as Kevin mentioned, so HCD is responsible for designating jurisdictions as pro-housing. And when they demonstrate policies and strategies that can help accelerate housing production. And in turn, pro-housing jurisdictions may be awarded additional points or preferences in the grant programs, such as the ones you see as affordable housing and sustainable communities, transformative climate communities, and infill incentive grant programs. And in turn, the grants can help you fund the implementation of the housing element program. Next slide, please. And so what does becoming pro-housing entail? Well, jurisdictions must apply for the designation, and HCD recently released their proposed regulations that have not been adopted yet for the program, which focus on 4 categories that you see again on the screen. So favorable zoning and land use, acceleration of housing production timeframes, reduction of construction and development costs, and providing financial subsidies. And so now I'm going to pass things over back to Elizabeth to discuss the program recommendations which have been developed based on the outreach conducted for this effort, as well as the city's desire to become pro-housing. But again, while some of the housing element programs are being developed within the context of pro-housing, just keep in mind that not all the programs will be pro-housing.
All right, thank you, Erica. All right, so now that we've laid some of the groundwork, we would like to highlight some of the strategies that our team has identified to be taken over the next 8 years to help Indio meet its housing needs within the planning period. Strategies have been informed by the analysis conducted as well as outreach conducted to date and within the context of pro-housing. Current efforts that are underway, such as updates to the city zoning code and the fee schedule, will be included as programs of the housing element, so that progress may be made apparent during the 8-year period. For the sake of time, programs that we will not cover today include those minor changes to the city's adopted code that are required by state law to be included as programs in the housing element, or other programs that are being continued from the previous housing element. So we've grouped recommended programs into categories for this presentation just so they can be communicated more easily. So first, we have recommended programs that would be implemented through future planning efforts, what we have categorized as planning strategies. Starting off with continuing to increase housing capacity throughout the cycle. This could be done through focused plan amendments, comprehensive rezones, or zoning code amendments, and focus on increasing opportunities in areas with access to retail, schools, transit, or other such resources. By right processing is something that the state has been prioritizing over the last few years, as seen in changes to how supportive housing, emergency shelters, and accessory dwelling units are permitted. A program for by right housing would open up opportunities for the city to identify uses, areas, or zones where housing could be permitted by right to facilitate the production of housing. By right processing can be paired with objective development and design standards to ensure that the city's vision for development is met. Further, where such planning efforts are implemented, plans can be paired with environmental work that is done up front to permit CEQA streamlining for qualified, consistent projects. Other strategies include incentives and bonuses, which exist at the state level, but there's also opportunity for the city to go above and beyond what is offered at the state level, or to even implement the floor area ratio bonus program that is offered by the state, but's optional for cities. Place-based strategies can be used to implement area-specific change where there's an identified need. And of course, ongoing monitoring and amendments to the city's zoning code will help the city adjust to changing needs and statewide legislative changes. The next program category includes feasibility, funding, and infrastructure strategies. These programs focus on studying the feasibility of programs like inclusionary housing, commercial linkage fees, and parking reductions, and continuing to analyze and update the city's development impact fees as necessary. Further programs set out to seek funding through existing funding mechanisms such as statewide grants, exploring and identifying opportunities for new funding sources such as infrastructure enhancement districts, and of course, any funding collected through implementation of some of the programs that could be studied. And then finally, developing a local housing trust fund to set aside any revenue collected for affordable housing construction, rehabilitation, and preservation, and to make Indio eligible for state trust fund matching. And our final program category is communication strategies. These strategies consist of making existing resources easily accessible to the public, developing new informational resources for ensuring that existing programs, processes, and procedures can be understood by those that need them, and working closely with community members to share city knowledge. All right, so I'm now going to pass things over to Nathan Mader with London Mader Associates.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're the economics and market analysis feasibility consultants at London Mader Advisors, and we are engaging in the various prototypes of development that are targeted for this next round of the housing cycle. And what I want to show you today is just kind of the methodology, very high level, and just go over some of the construction costs of what we're looking at, how expensive it is to build locally in Indio, and actually it would be all throughout the Desert Valley, in fact. So the approach we've taken with Dudek and the development team is we've looked at 5 different scenarios of prototypes that could be developed in the Indio area. Looking at the code as well. So we have a suburban, which is your traditional single family home detached, a connected scenario, which is more of attached single family homes, a more dense version of single family homes. Mixed use is medium density, where we get up to about 30 units to the acre. So I would think of this as 1 to 2 story apartment product. The midtown would be a medium to high density, up to 40 units to the acre. This would get to about 3, maybe 4 stories. And then downtown is where we go a higher density of construction, 60 units to the acre. This usually involves a parking garage or something of that nature to accommodate all the parking required. So across the board, we've looked at just everything on a 20,000 foot parcel because I wanted to keep everything apples to apples. So if you had a piece of land of about 20,000 square feet, what would be the per unit cost of developing these different prototypes? And if I could have the next slide, please. So what we're looking at here in the suburban is if we're doing your traditional single family homes, you can fit about 3 of them on this 20,000 foot parcel. What I want you to focus on down here is the per unit home cost, or the per unit or per gross square footage cost. So for suburban homes, we're looking at about $346,000 a home to build. Of course, this achieves the highest sale price. So when it comes to feasibility, this has been traditionally pretty feasible because, prices for newer homes in the area is about $450,000. The connected, which is a more dense single family home, you can see how construction costs are lower by almost $125,000. So you're looking at about $230,000 per unit to build a connected single family home, higher dense community. These are smaller lots. They might be sharing walls. It might be your duplexes or fourplexes that are 1,400 to 1,600 square feet. So there is some efficiency, some economies of scale of doing this type of product. So again, that's about $230,000 per unit. On the mixed use side, where we start going more dense, this would be your 1-2 story apartments. Construction costs jump up again. Now we're going vertical. It's probably 2 stories. The mechanical systems are a little more complicated. You've got to accommodate parking on site. So we're looking at about $327,000 per unit with this type of lower density multifamily apartments. When you go up an additional density to the midtown, you're really building the same kind of apartments and multifamily in the mixed use. It's just you're adding an extra story or 2. So costs come down a little bit to $312,000 a unit because there is some economies of scale with like the site improvement costs and that would need to be done, and the plumbing and things like that. The downtown is where it gets expensive. This is where we're looking at 60 units to the acre or higher. Okay, so we're looking at 27 units on a half-acre parcel or 60 units to the acre. This is usually, if you can't identify an adjacent parking lot next door where you can park your cars, you've got to build it on site. And the cheapest way to do that is what we call a wrap construction, where if you think about building a parking garage and you wrap it with residential units. So it's usually about a 3-story parking garage. You wrap it with residential units so you don't actually see it. It's cosmetically very appealing because you just see the outside of it, of the units, but it's more expensive. You're talking about some concrete reinforcement and some level of steel a little bit in that parking garage. So this is where construction costs really jump up, $479,000 a unit. So this downtown higher dense scenario is the most expensive type of construction. So with that, when we're talking about the cheapest form, it's really this connected community and the 2 mixed use. And suburban, while it is higher, single family homes, they are priced at a higher price point. So you can build that and have a feasible development. And I'll just close my section here by just saying, the next stage that we're doing is analyzing feasibility of how these would actually pan out and what's the most feasible type of development. But for what it's worth right now, I wanted to share with you the costs. I do have available detailed construction budgets behind each one of these. So if that is requested of us, we're happy to provide that information.
All right, thanks, Nathan. So we're moving fast here. We're just going to review our next steps in the housing element update process. Our next steps include completing the draft of the housing element, submitting this draft for both HCD and public review, finalizing the housing element for adoption, and then once the housing element is adopted, we will send the adopted housing element to HCD for their final review and certification. And then we'll just wrap things up with a couple of prompting questions for consideration. We'd like to understand the council's preference on the program recommendations that we discussed today. And our prompting questions are on the screen here. As it relates to the programs discussed, are there any specific programs that you're not willing to explore over the next 8-year planning cycle? Or are there any other types of programs that you have in mind that we didn't mention? Also, we have Nathan here for market-focused questions and comments. I don't think he's planning on staying for the entire meeting, so those specific questions can begin the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll take over the meeting while the mayor stepped out for a brief second. Do you have any comments of the consultants? We'll start with the planning commission. Planning commission,
I will go ahead and go first.
Ms. Lopez.
Yes. My question is, I guess, and to look at the next 8 years, are there any programs or available for like first time buyers, but like focused more on current like residents, like say for instance, like an Indio resident that's trying to buy a home in the city and they're a first time buyer, but it's super competitive. Is there any programs out there or any other cities kind of implementing that kind of like kind of local first program? Or any kind of, I'm just like thinking about like how to get, I know there's been some challenges with like local residents trying to, that want to buy, they're currently renting, and they want to buy a home and it's just super competitive with the current market, but don't know if there's anything out there that would, in the next 8 years or any other programs or any other cities that are implementing like a local first to kind of give first-time home buyer program, like first-time home buyers like that are from Indio or live in Indio.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Kevin Snyder, I'll answer, and then the consultants may have additional thoughts. The city is actually is a party to a consortium of cities together with Riverside County Housing Authority that applied for a state grant, approximately $10 million state grant. That grant has been awarded to Riverside County Housing Authority, and it has two main components. It has a first-time home buyer program, and it also has a affordable housing development program. So there will be opportunities that the Riverside County Housing Authority is in the process of developing both program elements for launch later this year. But there will be opportunities for Indio residents to be part of both of those in the context of applying for first-time home buyer assistance. And then if there are projects that offer affordable housing, the development of affordable housing units, then Indio residents will have access to this. And perhaps the consultant team might have additional thoughts.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm happy to add just a couple of other things from the program perspective. While we did discuss the local housing trust fund and looking for sources to identify and collect funding to keep within a local housing trust fund, as it relates to home ownership at the local level and not relying on external resources, we do have programs to consider connecting with residents to inform them about creative ownership models, looking at things like community land trust and that sort of thing. And a lot of that can be done by connecting with some nonprofits or even connecting residents with available information.
Okay, if I may, two things. For the record, I'd like to let everyone know that everyone from the Planning Commission is present at this meeting. Do we need to take roll call or does that suffice?
That's okay. That's
Okay.
Thank you.
And then I understand that Council Member Amit has her hand raised.
Would you like to finish with the Planning Commission, Mayor, before I move forward?
That would be terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Any other comments? I'm sure there are many comments by the Planning Commission. Please.
So
Go ahead, Gloria.
okay, thanks. So one of the things we keep talking about is how important, we're going through our zoning, right? Redoing our zoning so that it's easier to build, hopefully within the city, with our plan. So when we were looking at those cost of construction for houses, so the connected seem to be most cost effective, which would give us hopefully some more entry level starter homes, which is I think one of the things that we've talked about that we need within the city. When we do the review of the zoning, will we be looking to be specific enough to say certain parts of our city, certain land area, and maybe do a zoning overlay where we would encourage like certain types of housing in those areas and make it easier for builders to come in and build certain things in certain areas?
Thank you, Commissioner Franz. Kevin Snyder again. So yes, the Planning Commission will be developing recommendations to City Council, and you can develop various recommendations ranging from identifying areas of the city that you recommend be considered for by right housing, which would reduce the processing timelines as well as the processes that have to go through. For example, you may just say certain areas of the city can go through a expedited design review process as an example, whether that be at the staff level or with the Planning Commission. For example, in the downtown specific plan, we do reviews in 90 days or less. We've committed to that. So that is an opportunity. There are also opportunities to look at affordable housing overlays throughout the city, where we really promote and find various mechanisms to incentivize, primarily through regulatory means, but perhaps even through financial means if the council ultimately in their financial stewardship capacity was to consider that. So I think the short answer to your question is yes, we will be looking at that. And you as a commission member and the rest of the commission will have the opportunity to make your recommendations to the rest of the council and give them the input you think is important to help spur housing production, which is key.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we had that level of detail was going to be part of this plan. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Commissioner Isiano.
Not really an additional comment, more in regards to Chairperson Lopez's comment and Kevin Snyder's response to upcoming programs for kind of putting locals first, or whatever programs we have available for our Indio renters looking to become first-time homeowners. Any information on upcoming programs, I'm sure we would see, because I've been seeing, I believe it's Brooke Bear's been doing a great job of getting a lot of that info out to the community via Facebook and via Nextdoor. I actually see, a lot of updates of things that I was unaware of, even being part of the Planning Commission, come up across those feeds. So I think if we could use as many avenues to try and get that information out to, there may be some people who may have given up hope and think that they'll never be able to, qualify to purchase a home in Indio, at the current market. There may be a lot of first-time home buyers looking to make a move, and if there's any assistance we can give them, I'd love for them to be made aware.
I have a thought, if I may, along those lines. Is it reasonable, or has it ever been done, where the city develops relationships with mortgage lenders, right? So that there is, some manner in which those mortgage lenders to folks, in the city of Indio can give, some level of incentive or discounted rate or something of that nature.
It's a great question, Mayor. I'm not sure about Indio pursuing that. I'm aware of other communities that have developed partnership models with financial institutions. Many of the regulated financial institutions have a community assistance requirement through their federal regulatory structure. So I think it'd be an interesting model to pursue, to see if we could find any financial institutions that would be willing to partner to offer either creative or innovative financing models, perhaps expedited financing procedures. So that's definitely something we could look at. And I think to roll into Commissioner Enciano's statement, part of the communication, part of the strategies that was identified earlier by Elizabeth was increasing our communication. So if we were successful in developing those partnerships, we could certainly communicate that out to the community. Also, I think it's opportunity to remind those that are listening that the City Council has preliminarily identified pending action later today, funding for the continuation of the minor home repair program. And that program is a community development block grant funded program that can assist individuals with the stay in their households with necessary repairs that make it feasible for them to not consider moving elsewhere. So, and that is a program that we will continue to push out to the community to assist our residents as well. So, but going back to the mayor's original point, yeah, I definitely think that that's not an opportunity to look at.
Perfect. Yes, well,
Sorry.
let's go through
Oh,
the
no,
plan.
just part of your question.
Okay, perfect.
First Bank is working with the Housing Coalition on doing single family homes. I think they have a pilot project on Desert at the moment going on there.
I think that's great, and I think that can be even more broad in terms of other local financial institutions. I know California Bank and Trust is very involved in the community, and I think we can also engage them as well. So it just occurred to me, how can we, sometimes it's hard to say, okay, first come to Indio residents. Sometimes it's hard, but if we can provide some sort of financial incentive or something to someone, it might make the process easier. I know there's a couple of other planning commissioners, Commissioner Seha and Valdez. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, actually, it's more of a question in regards to our path to designation for pro-housing. I know that you outlined that in part of that is acceleration of housing production and reduction of construction costs. And I'm assuming that the programs that we are going to be exploring will be focused on bringing us to that. I guess my question is, to what extent does that affect more of these high-end homes? Is it limited to specific type of housing? And is there anything that has been done in the past to sort of allocate those, I don't know, what's the word, privileges or opportunities for certain type of housing? Or is this something more that needs to be opened up generally to all developers as they're thinking about coming and developing in our city?
Elizabeth, would you like to take the initial stab in responding?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, so I think the thing to consider is that what the city can control is their processes and their procedures. And so with that in mind, you can improve your processes and procedures to facilitate the types of housing that you want to see. The types of housing that are really going to facilitate that construction through pro-housing is going to be multifamily housing. I know that we are talking a lot about ownership in the context of single family homes, but ownership can exist through multifamily housing as well. And we have certainly included language that supports that within our draft.
If I can just add to what Elizabeth said, the city can establish policy objectives to prioritize certain housing types over other housing types. You can establish focused regulatory or financial incentives for the housing types that the city council prefers. So there are various policy options available to the council. So when we get into that more in-depth pro-housing discussion, and remember, pro-housing is a new concept. The state, well, they've published their initial guidelines. They're not final yet, as Elizabeth pointed out. And I think honestly, the state's still kind of learning what this looks like. So I think it gives us some flexibility to be innovative and creative and be responsive to our local conditions. At the same time, still getting that designation, which can support us as we go out and seek what we used to call other people's money to assist us in meeting our goals. So I think there's various opportunities to explore the boldness and the innovation I know that the City Council and Commission has expressed interest in.
Okay, does anyone else on Planning Commission have any comments before I turn it over to, I'm sorry? I don't see hands up. There you go, please. Commissioner Valdez, welcome, and please go ahead.
Thank you. I actually wanted to add on to what Commissioner Jackie mentioned, if there's some sort of a program that we can structure for all of our local buyers. I mean, we're currently facing a housing shortage, and everyone that's coming in and buying up all the homes are from out of town. We have people coming in from Orange County, from Northern California, from San Diego, from LA, and all of our local buyers are getting kicked out of the game. I mean, there's like 15, 20 offers per property, and people who live here who are trying to upgrade their home or trying to buy a home are just, missing out on the opportunity because we have people that are coming in and waiving appraisal contingencies and coming in with a difference on cash and buying these homes and leaving our locals out of the game. So maybe structuring a plan, some type of a housing development that would give our locals the opportunity, give them a first dib on purchasing a home, and then structuring another housing development where, we can get that new money coming into the town as well, because we, want to keep our locals, but we also want to capture in the new people that are coming in to purchase. So that's pretty much what I want to say. We can structure something to for a program for our locals, and then capture the new money that's coming into the desert.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, now, Councilmember Amit.
Mayor, I believe Commissioner Lopez wanted to speak as well.
I see that. Please jump in.
I'm going to go ahead and give my time to Councilwoman Ramos Amith.
Thank you, Chairperson. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do have a question. The City of Indio recently passed the downtown specific plan where we plan on building downtown public parking, and we also discovered that we have an overparking situation. I'd like to ask the economist if he could reevaluate the downtown development to exclude parking requirements so that we can get a more true up cost of what it would cost to build the higher density in the downtown district. I'm not sure that he could do that off the cuff, but I really think that moving forward, we need to have that number trued up to what the downtown specific plan already indicates that we will do, which is to build downtown parking. As far as strategies and policies, I'm a high proponent and supporter of density bonuses. If anyone wants to come in and build higher density so that we can have the type of housing that our community needs to be able to transition from renting to ownership before they go into a single family dwelling, then I'm really supportive of giving that density bonus to any developer. However, I'm not supportive of inclusionary housing. I don't believe that it's the city government's position to dictate the market demand. I think the market needs to drive the demand, and the development community are the front line, know what it is that is needed in a community. So if we expedite their processing as development come forward and we allow for density bonuses and help them out with offsite parking, then I think that we'll have the type of housing that we need to meet everyone's needs within our community. And those are all the comments I have this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments by council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Kevin, for everyone for the presentation. I hear what everybody's saying. I think that we all want a variety of houses. I've looked at it, trying to come in with modular homes because it uses less opportunities for land use, because all you have to do is pour a pad and put it down. Mobile homes, apartments, we're not talking anything of smaller homes from condominiums or townhouses, which could be attached. We have certain areas. Single family homes are very expensive. And I agree with Councilmember Mead on the density bonuses, but I'm not a big proponent of not having parking for people. I really doubt that too many people are going to park their car in a parking structure and walk in 100, like today, 100-degree heat with their groceries, everything else, over to Miles Avenue. And then when their kids are ready for school, get them ready, walk, march them all the way down to the parking structure, pick up a car that most of them aren't going to do. I mean, we've got to be realistic of what people will actually do and who's responsible for the cars and parking structure. Now is the city going to have to provide a security guard or whatever to make sure that we don't have petty crimes? A lot of other things that end up happening when we do that. So how do we come up with a solution? Because I think we do have to come up with areas that we're willing to do high density housing and then incentivize people to come to those areas. And it's got to be none of the NIMBY stuff. It's going to have to be divided up across the whole city. Some John Noble, some of the downtown areas, some down by Jefferson and 50th. We're going to have to look to be able to divide it. So when we come in with these other plans, we're going to have to all agree that yes, it's going to be a good idea to divide it up where we have services. But we also have opportunities like as a transportation center. We've talked about it multiple times. The city of Coachella is a prime example where they got a large grant because of their transportation, because they put it on a corridor next to a transportation area. We have that opportunity. We haven't explored it. So I think we have a lot of ways to do things. We just got to put it all on paper and then agree to be able to do it and go after certain things that we just haven't seen before. we have plenty of land to be able to do it. So we just need to have to plan to be able to do it, put it forward. But we got to be open to all kinds of homes, from apartments to condominiums to townhouses to attached homes. And I agree with Councilmember Mead on the other part too. The market will dictate. You know, people are coming into the city of Indio to buy houses because they're cheap compared to where they're leaving. It's really difficult to say we're going to give them the Indio residence first. And what is an Indio resident? Somebody's been here one day, somebody's been here 10 years. So, you know, that's who picks them. We do, you know, I mean, so it's something we need to look at, but there's a lot of opportunities. Great stuff here, but a lot to build on. So.
If I could, thank you, Councilmember. Just a couple of quick thoughts in response to your statements. One, Councilmember almost me talked about the expediting of permits and approvals. And as a former consultant, I will tell you that that is money, so to speak, to the developers, because it is time and certainty that they value most, and reasonableness in the cost structures. Most developers know that they will have to pay fees, and they hope and expect that they will be reasonable. You as a council, with support from your planning commission, will need to identify what, if anything, you want to do to prioritize housing production. That is the biggest challenge. We are talking close to 9,000 housing units that we are planning for, with the arena numbers of 7,812 plus our no net loss requirement from the state. So we're talking 9,000 units, which 2,900 are supposed to be affordable. So we have to, and in our best year recently, we did 420 permits, new building permits, mostly single family homes. In fact, all single family homes, just about. So the point being is, to get anywhere near those numbers, we have to significantly increase our housing production. We can do that a variety of ways, but in the simplest equation, to borrow a phrase from our city manager, we need to get stuff done, so to speak, with our processing and our reviews, and provide that level of certainty to the marketplace to respond favorably. I do agree with the council member that there are areas of opportunity throughout our city, and as a policy discussion for the council, if you want to prioritize those areas for affordable housing overlays, or if you want to provide certain regulatory incentives or financial incentives in those areas to spur development, these are tried and true tactics and methodologies that many cities have used and been very successful at.
Just one quick one, Kevin. So when we're doing reading numbers, does that include rentals, apartments, and that, or are we talking about homes? I mean, I know it's gone back and forth with the state, because we have 4 apartment complexes that have been already talked about. I mean, does that play into our numbers, or are we talking actually dwellings that have to be purchased?
So the arena numbers are units. So it's not distinguished between rental and housing, but it is obviously a policy consideration for the city council as to what you want to focus your energy on. Honestly, multifamily housing is a key component. Compared to other cities, our inventory is quite low for cities of our comparable size in terms of multifamily housing. That is an area of opportunity. I recognize that for many cities, home ownership is a goal, and affordable single family housing is certainly, I think, is a goal of all people who live and work in the city. But we all have lived in various housing situations over our life, so having that part of our inventory beefed up, in my opinion, is a solid way to help with the arena numbers and also provide more diverse housing products to our citizens, both current and future. Thank you.
Jump in. Did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that we are having maybe more shorter time frames for our goals. I know last time we had our housing element, we had a plan for 8 years. But when we look back on our housing production, over 90% has been for high income homes, right? So I think I'm looking at just looking at the numbers, right? The 44% of our households rent burden, 57% of renters rent burden, 10% of our residents live in overcrowded conditions. Today we got new numbers that show that if we look at the bottom half of our income levels, so 50% of our population, they're spending more than 50% of their income on rent. And so for me, the priority is how do we get people out of that economic instability that's being driven by the housing market, right? I just feel like more and more of our residents' income is being funneled out of the community through these rent prices. And so first first would be, that's my priority, right? Finding places for these families who are overcrowded or cannot afford their rents to be able to live comfortably with a better quality of life in Indio. The other concern that I have is how do we spread this out throughout the city so that we're not, promoting segregation by income? And actually, when we look at the numbers from today that we just looked at, looking at the connected neighborhoods and the connected homes, right, in the connected neighborhoods, that is actually more affordable to produce than the multifamily housing, right? So then if we're looking at other areas of the city, so not just downtown, right, but we're looking at other areas that have a lower density, then we can build single family homes there. And we have that mechanism now through some of the nonprofits and some of our local banks where we can actually provide, and it's being done in other cities, right? So we can, the process is already there, it's available. So we can look at how we distribute these affordable homes to different parts of our areas, even if they're low density or high density areas. And that's, also that provides the avenue for home ownership that we talked about. That can be, generational wealth. We know a lot of times that comes from home ownership, land ownership, and also the prioritizing of Indio residents, right? If we're working with nonprofits like that, then we can prioritize the marketing of those homes to Indio residents. And that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Leave me a few minutes. Mayor Pro Tem, please, the floor is yours.
I just have a couple of questions. One may be a rhetorical question. I've seen some models of high density developments that come with childcare. Is there opportunity to get grants with some of those developments that come with childcare? And also from a sustainability aspect of working with transportation, I think it was mentioned already, we worked with or consulted with some of our local transportation, i.e. Sunline, on the routes that would tailor to some of these developments if possible, or some of these areas to help people not only get folks off the road, but help them with their financial status of saving money, utilizing the Sunline Transit. I know they do studies when they, work on their routes, but I think that's also another mechanism or another avenue that we should also consider. And also from a affordable area, actually, let me go back to our partnerships with some of our local realtors and real estate agencies. Do we have any kind of programs that we could, actually the city could serve as a resource to put out to serve as an educational mechanism with folks to learn how to set themselves up to buy houses, starting from financial literacy to getting their credit scores up, to working with the real estate agencies to get their houses, because sometimes there may be some folks who are maybe ready to purchase a single family home and transition from a high density area, but they just don't know or have the mechanism to do that. Those are just a couple of questions I had.
I will take a stab, and then if the consulting team has any additional thoughts. So start with the question about Sunline, which is our public transportation transit provider. Interesting question. Sunline is a small transit provider agency in the context of the area that they serve and the population they serve. They haven't really focused much on transit-oriented development. In fact, I was in a recent conversation with their planning manager, and he said that, this is something that they're starting to get more inquiries from, not only from Indio, but from other cities, as we all look at how to provide a different housing product type in our cities. So it is not something that they're too familiar with, but they're getting familiar with, and I anticipate there'll be more conversations as time goes on. The question about housing, affordable housing developments with childcare, I have seen that in other communities as well, Councilmember, or Member, excuse me. And I think there are opportunities. I think it depends on the developer and their relationships that they have either existing or can bring to bear on that scenario. I am familiar just from my own personal experience in working in other communities where there are close partnerships between affordable housing developers and those child care providers, because often they go hand in hand. The need is the same. The parents need a safe and convenient place to have their children be situated while they're going to work. So oftentimes there's a great partnership model, and I think that is something that, as we go further into our working relationship with our local partners, we could definitely explore and encourage There may be granting opportunities out there through early childhood education grants and other approaches. And then the idea of programs you mentioned. So we have a foundation of programs in the city, and I certainly won't commit the city. That's not my job. That's the city manager's decision. I think there are opportunities for us to lay a foundation of partnerships with entities that provide those kind of trainings and offer a forum, a space, city-sponsored opportunities to bring those people in and provide those training opportunities. We do some things under our community development block grant program and in the past through our neighborhood stabilization program. But I think there's a lot more opportunities out there that we could explore working with the city manager's office to determine what is feasible and comparable to our resource levels.
Great, thank you.
And so my comments are along a few different lines. First of all, the density bonus is something I think I've always supported. Just the parking, you know, we have to be a little tighter with the parking, but we have to be careful. I'm going to sneeze, excuse me. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. We have to tighten up the parking a little bit, but at the same time, we just have to, you know, there are places in Orange County, which is where I spent part of my life, in the Santa Ana area where cars might as well be stacked upon each other. You can't even walk between them. And I think we want to be careful of that. I want to look at different kinds of housing, you know, lofts, right? 1 bedrooms, studios. There are students. There are people that work at the courthouse and other places that are young, that are starting out. And so to have a loft type of arrangement, or to have a studio kind of arrangement, that level as well, integrated into all of this. I mean, we talk about wanting an artist environment and an artist here in the city of Indio. Well, we need artist lofts. We need to spur that and have that be a part of the conversation. And the other thing that's important to me as we include all of this is senior housing. Senior housing also has to be affordable. But some of the numbers that Councilmember Ortiz discussed undoubtedly have to do with our senior population. And, you know, there's a significant amount of our homeless population that are seniors. And I think we need, again, we look at the smaller bedrooms, whatever, we need to incorporate that. And last but not least, if we look at all of these different options and opportunities, we need to remember quality. We need that space for the child care facility or for a recreation room. People need, at whatever economic level they're at, to be proud of where they live and to be able to gather with friends and family. And I'm all over the place. And so I see boxes sometimes. I was in Anaheim not too long ago, and you can tell that ultra low, they're boxes. They're boxes without shade, without design, without anything. They're boxes. And I really don't want to go there, because I think we need to ensure that whatever affordable oriented environments that we are in have to have some level of community engagement, of quality, of shade. It's 120 degrees of some of the niceties. Obviously, you're not going to get, you know, a whole lot, but I mean, I look at some of the homes that we built through Habitat and Fix Up, and those have some very nice amenities, not super duper high end, but very nice amenities. And I think we need to keep a certain level of quality so that our affordables don't look like people living in cardboard boxes with plaster on them. We really need to watch that quality and ensure that that exists. My 2 cents for what it's worth. What are the next steps?
Thank you, Mayor. We will close now, knowing we need to move on. But first of all, thank you to the City Council and the Planning Commission for taking time early in the afternoon to get together on this very important topic. A couple of takeaways that I have heard is that it appears the council, with support from the Planning Commission, is open to the idea of looking at the pro-housing designation. So we will be doing more work on that. We are going to be going into our sprint on the housing element. When it comes back to the Planning Commission, City Council, please don't get disappointed if it seems a little bit more mundane than the conversation today, because again, as I said earlier in the meeting, it's more of a checklist approach. Your opportunity and the Commission's opportunity to talk about those pro-housing policies and all the ideas that you threw out today. We will be back before you to talk about those at the beginning of the new calendar year and really chart that path that the city council and the commission, the community want to address the need of housing, both quality and production in our city. So we are beginning to target get this to you by the end of this calendar year, early first part actually January of 2022. So we will be doing a lot of work. There'll be a lot of information going out to the public. We'll be holding more community meetings. The draft housing element will be out for review. There'll be plenty of opportunities for the community to comment. We'll be in front of the planning commission and all the recommendations. So lots more to come. But thank you for your input. Great as always. Thank you to the planning commission for great input, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the planning commission. Thank you for speaking out. Thank you for all your comments. Really appreciate it. This is how we build our community. Okay, now I believe we have closed session, but we leave this link open, correct? God, I'm getting into this.
So you can announce closed session now.
Okay. Terrific. And there we go. All right. It is 4:01. Thank you, Kevin. It is 4:01. This is the 16th of June. This is closed session for the City Council successor agency and the redevelopment agency of the city of Indio. May I have roll call, please?
For the record, all persons present at the closed session.
Okay. Is there any public comment?
No comment, Mayor.
Okay, so adjourn the closed session to consider. City Attorney, you want me to go through all this?
Go ahead and do it. It will be item A, conference with real property negotiators, Government Code Section 54956.8, 81727 Highway 111, successor agency to the redevelopment agency of the city of Indio, negotiator Brian Montgomery, executive director, negotiating party Regency Theaters, under negotiation, price and terms of payment. Item B is the same property with Brian H. Montgomery as the executive director for the successor agency negotiator, negotiating party ME Development Company, LLC, under negotiation, price and terms of payment. And item C is for the same property with the negotiating party Destiny Ministries Church, under negotiation, price and terms of payment. Item D, conference with real property negotiators, Government Code Section 54956.8, City of Indio property located on the northeast corner of Monroe Street and John Nobles Avenue for the APNs listed therein. City of Indio negotiator Brian H. Montgomery, city manager, negotiating party HCL Indio Marketplace, under negotiation, price and terms of payment. Item E, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure litigation. Government Code Section 54956.9D2, number of potential cases 1. Item F, conference with labor negotiator, Government Code Section 54957.6. City negotiator Brian H. Montgomery, city manager, Rob Rockwell, assistant city manager, finance director, and Scott Trujillo, deputy city manager. Employee organizations, Indio Police Officers Association, Police Command Unit Association, Indio City Employees Association, Indio Water Authority Employees Association, and Service Employees International Union. Madam Mayor, that is it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now adjourn the closed session.
Thank you.
I was trying to say is you guys on screen. So quick. That's all I was trying to say.
Who's bothering?
Because I'm watching.
Why don't you leave this Zoom and then you can rejoin the next Zoom.